conversation today. So again, like I said, my name is Nick North. I'm an area director for Oregon State University. My areas of responsibility are for our student staff selection and training processes. And so I volunteer. I'm also on the board. I'm for NWACUHO. I'm our treasurer. And so I volunteered to kind of host today's conversation just because it aligns with my work, and I thought it might be a good time at the beginning of the summer to start just kind of sharing and talking a little bit about our student staff training, which we know are really big parts of our process, or really big times of year for us as we get started for the year. My hope today, I'm going to share just a little bit of a brief little kind of journey that Oregon State went through here recently, of shifting up and adding some new things to our fall staff training. But my hope is that, and then, but that'll only take maybe like 10 minutes, like just a real quick overview of some of the things that we incorporated. But my hope is today is that we really use the time as a roundtable where we can kind of talk and share ideas, ask questions. I've got a couple prompts or a couple things that we can kind of think about, but really my hope is more engagement and just allowing the conversation to go where it needs to go today, and what would be most helpful from the group. So I think I would like to maybe briefly start off with maybe quick introductions of who's in the room. Just kind of maybe your what other information you want to share about yourself as far as your name, pronouns, those things. And then maybe what you were kind of hoping to get, or why you joined the session today. What do you want to get out? What are you looking for from the group? So I already shared my name and information for you. And part of what I'm hoping to do today is to both share some of the exciting things OSU has done, but also get a little bit more some new ideas and some feedback on other ways in which universities or other schools are in creating engaging opportunities for their student leaders. Laura, why don't you introduce yourself next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Corral. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Associate Director of Housing Services at the University of Lethbridge, and I'm also the Canadian Membership Director for the Board of NWACUHO. I'm here to help facilitate, so if you have any questions, you can always send me a message. But I'm also here to just pick people's brains. I always have lots of questions about what people are doing and what changes they're making. So I'm excited to have such a good group. I can pass it on to the next person if you want, Nick.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Dave.
Hi, I'm Dave Craig. I am the Director of Business Development and Assessment at Oregon State University. I use he, him pronouns. I'm also the president of NWACUHO, so it is my pleasure to work with Laura and Nick on the board, and Ty every now and then as we collaborate on things of mutual interest to NWACUHO and the RLPA. And I can pass it on to Teresa.
Great. Good morning. My name is Teresa Brostowitz. I use she, her. I'm the Assistant Director of Campus Living at Lewis and Clark College, which is in Southern Portland. And I'm here because I really believe in the efficacy of experiential learning. And it's something that I've really been thinking a lot about and intentionally about interjecting more into our student leader training. And this will be my second year of doing training at Lewis and Clark. So the first one, I was more of an observer. And so this year now, I really want to start early with thinking about what kinds of experiential opportunities we'll be able to offer. So super excited to learn from you all. Thank you for having me. I'll popcorn it over to Jay.
Everyone, my name is Jay, use they, them pronouns. I am a very recently hired housing manager for North Island College. We're currently building our first housing project, which will open in September 2025. So we're all getting our feet under us in preparation for that. I run 6 different student volunteer and youth leadership teams, but never had to do it on the housing side of things. So looking forward to the conversation today. I'll maybe throw it to Hannah.
Hi, my name's Hannah. I use she, they pronouns. I am an area director over at Lewis and Clark College with Teresa in the same department. And so I would say that I'm just interested in echoing kind of what other folks' thoughts are, just providing student leaders with a really well-rounded basis of knowledge as they walk into a new academic year, and giving them the confidence in their role to succeed. I will pass it to Kaden.
Good morning, folks. My name is Caden Diamond. I'm the Housing Services Residence Director over at Portland State University. I'm interested in this training because I'm always looking for opportunities to help become a better trainer and be able to support student leaders and student staff in a variety of different ways. And then I'll popcorn it to Sarah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah. I am a Residence Life and Education Coordinator at the University of Lethbridge. Laura actually just messaged us that this was going on and about the student staff training, which we are, as I'm sure many of you, in the process of revamping and preparing for this coming fall. So yeah, just wanting to listen to get some new ideas, and yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you. Oh, and I'll pass it to Taylor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor, and I'm also at the University of Lethbridge as a Residence Life and Education Coordinator. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here, same as what Sarah said. Laura let us know about this opportunity. And as we're prepping for fall training, we're always looking for new ways to kind of improve our training program and support our student leaders. So that's why I'm here today as well. My camera's off just because the lighting is bonkers in my office. So I am here. I apologize if you don't see me on screen though. And I will popcorn it off to who hasn't gone yet. Oh, Sonora.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sonora. I use she, her, aya pronouns. I am the assistant director at for residential life at Eastern Washington University. And we are just kind of in the process of revamping our curriculum programming model, how we're actually, carrying training throughout the year versus just at an initial fall kind of thing. So yeah, just wanting to hear some ideas on what is actually working and being efficient for training and maybe what's not, and just getting some more insight on this ever-changing student population. So I think, is it Amon? Amen? Amon?
Yeah, Ammon's fine too. My name is Ammon Milligan. I am the director of residence halls and residential life at Big Bend Community College. So much smaller scale. Just wanting to learn best practices, what everyone else is doing. Been in this role not quite a year. So this will be the second year of RA training that we're going through. Last year's before me, the previous director just had him set up not for success. So I'm just trying to help our team be better. And I don't know who's left.
Yeah, I think Ty, Christine, Adil.
Ty, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Ty Thomas, pronouns he, him. I'm a residence life coordinator at the University of Calgary. I'm also the president of the Residence Life Professional Association, or the RLPA. So I work, quite closely with Dave and the rest of NWACUHO. I think why I'm joining this call is mainly because the rest of my team have started to have conversations about what the format of our 2-week long training looks like, and then that ongoing training as well. We're looking to ideally go towards over a 30% content and then 70% application, practical application within our training this year, and that's something we haven't done before. So looking to get some insights about that. And I'll pass off to Adil.
Thank you, Ty. My name is Adil. I'm also a residence life coordinator at University of Calgary. I use he, him pronouns. I'm also interested in the roundtable just to get an idea on how people are approaching it and what different directions at strategic level people are moving ahead as far as this year is concerned. As Ty mentioned, we have been taking certain decisions at this point in terms of planning and content development. So learning from all of you is going to be extremely helpful for us. I'm looking forward to the session as it unfolds. And I think there's one person left. I forgot the name. So whoever is it, please go ahead.
Oh, Christine, I think you're muted.
Of course I'm muted. So thank you, Adele. Christine Zapsaki from the University of the Fraser Valley. My pronouns are she, her. Like everybody else, super curious to see what others are doing. I like what you said, Ty, about learning more about practical applications, sort of giving a lived or experiential learning. I'd like to learn more about that. I also have a fair number of returners coming back this year, which is not the norm for me. So I'm interested to see how others incorporate returners into this training. Yes, just like here with that big flame of curiosity over my head.
Great.
Hopefully I can share stuff that we're doing too.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for sharing. I really appreciate it. I am going to, hold on one second. Okay, welcome. So I'm gonna thank you all for sharing. It's really helpful just to kind of know where we want to kind of take the conversation. Sounds like a lot of folks are starting to prep and plan, and kind of like what Ty said, you know, we also OSU were looking at ways in which we could apply more hands-on application experience. So we had gotten constant feedback from students that they were tired of sitting in just these long presentations and sessions, and so this last year was our first year where we were back fully in person. We have about 130 RAs. Also important to note that we have another 30 student staff leaders that are live-in staff similar to RAs, but they're a slightly different responsibilities. So we have academic learning assistants, so one per building, and diversity learning assistants, one per building. So those are also live-in student staff. And they do some training with everyone, and then they also do some of their own separate training. So they kind of pick and choose sessions that they come through. So about 160 staff members in total that we work with at our institution. So I know a little bit different than some schools that are present here, represented here today. But I want to give you that context because we went through this journey about where we could increase and focus in on a little bit more of that experiential learning component. So for folks who are not, I'm not going to go super deep into experiential learning, but basically experiential learning at its premise is learning by doing, right? So having some practical experiences that you can apply to reflect through. So doing the experience, having some components of reflection, thinking about the that experience, conceptualizing, making meaning of that experience, and then acting on and applying that experience in real life situations, and then going through that same kind of cycle. So basically, our team spent a lot of time thinking about what were the key elements of the different roles and the positions of what we wanted students to do, and instead of instructing and talking about what we wanted them to learn, we went through this process of like, how can we show them and have them do that in the moment? So that was really the litmus. We focused a little bit on some of our prior examples. So some things that we had always done as part of our training. So things like mock duty rounds where they would go on duty rounds within the community. Behind closed doors, I think, is a pretty universal experience that most schools at this point do. And those are always really highly rewarded and effective, or always had positive feedback from our assessment. Also talked a little bit about, practice conversations that we would do in some of our sessions, right? So a lot of our community development model or plan is focused on individual conversations. So, we give them opportunities to kind of practice those conversations with each other. Of course, team builders, we would have things like fire extinguisher training where they actually get to use a fire extinguisher, as well as like practice IR writing. So those are some of the ways in which we'd always already done, and we had always gotten really positive feedback. So some new things that we kind of had come up with and we developed, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about we kind of developed this this year. I want to kind of talk about. There was some really positive feedback that we had heard from students. So one of the first things were these conversation skills labs. So one of the things we found, especially from Zoom, was students just having a harder time engaging in conversations. And so we took a lot of different little team builders, things that we kind of created our own. We try to break down just what are some of the skills that it comes from, conversations. For example, things like being able to read body language, things that like we do as counselors and advisors and supporters, where we reflect back, students and summarize the things that they say to us, asking open-ended questions, like those kinds of different skill sets that come from really good conversations. We have our individual conversations where we have specific topics and questions that we want to ask, but one of the challenges we face with students would just read that question to them versus like get to that question or that topic from a conversation. And so that was one of the things we honed in on and had them kind of reflect on. And one of the activities we did from our conversation skills lab was around interviewing versus inserting yourself into the conversation. So we had this activity where they would do it one way where they just kind of interviewed question after question and they couldn't say anything. And then another activity, then they would do it again, but then they would be required to insert, kind of a comment or response from their own experience or lives to anything that that other person had said in that activity. And so so we had these and they were meant to be little micro experiences. So we had little groups of 15 and it was like a 20-minute session and we just rotated through these different activities. So it was a brief little activity, then some reflection questions on like how did it feel to be in that type of conversation, how do you apply this to the role, those kinds of things. And they'd rotate through the 5 different activities. We incorporated Goose Chase, which is a scavenger hunt program that we use. It's kind of like a social media, like it comes up in different, like a feed format with all the different teams. So there was a cost associated to that, but we share it with our department, RHA, dining, and Res Ed used as a kind of a community building tool. But we incorporated different activities or challenges for them to do throughout the week, things that they could do together, things that they could do with our leadership team. And then we also included resources and campus partner like scavenger hunt based like tasks or challenges as well. So it was a practical way for them to figure out how they developed community as a team and as a group. And we spent some time in our in-hall time reflecting on what was like to go through that Goose Chase experience. So it was a way to build off of that, like how do you build a team and build community. We also incorporated tabletop exercises as a precursor to our behind closed doors. So folks we felt were having a lot of anxiety or going through our behind closed doors. So we did basically like case study or tabletop exercises that we created different scenarios that were basically just BCDs, but had a little bit of more structure and more conversation built into that, where they could kind of go through that process. We did a facilities essential training where we had our facilities team come and show our staff how to turn off water, flip a breaker, like those kinds of basic things that students really responded well to, rather than just describing how they should do it. Like they actually got to flip the breaker or turn off the water. So some of those experiential things. So those were things that we incorporated into this last year. A couple of things that we're planning on bringing into this next year are a bulletin board showcase. So we'll give them the content in an hour and they'll get in groups and teams to actually create a bulletin board and do kind of a gallery style kind of competition of it as a way in which to get some practice of building a bulletin board and kind of the format which they normally would get it throughout the year, where they get some sort of content or topic or theme and have to put it together. We'll do some mock floor meetings. We plan on doing a session specifically for that, of facilitating community standards meetings. And then we added a program partnership. So one of the things of like how to plan a program and sort of the steps and stages, that was something, instead of doing like here's a guide and, you know, here's how to do it and just kind of talking about it. We are planning on partnering 2 buildings or communities together in one evening of our training. One team will plan a floor level program event for the other team, and then the next week that they'll do the vice versa. So it's got some engagement opportunities, as well as giving that team some practice with their supervisor and as a team to kind of come up with the start to finish program implementation at a scale that's what they'll be doing, right? Because our team, or at least our community development model, they're doing more of the floor level programs that might have 20 or 30 students. So that kind of works out for the number of people attending. So those are some of the things that we were kind of including and incorporating into our training, with that goal of like ever increasing more and more opportunities. A couple of the things that we also were planning to do, some tweaks that I wanted to mention with our behind closed doors and tabletop exercises. We had this really unique partnership with our survivor advocacy resource center on campus and in our community, where they came in and were present for our behind closed doors to help support students and some of that secondary trauma triggers and just the intensity of that training in those days when we talk about sexual violence. And so one of the things that I'm hoping to include is having them do a sort of a demonstration of what a conversation might look like. So behind closed doors, but just with the advocates first. So that way they can kind of experience that, as well as then also we have enough advocates in our area who I'm going to try to shoulder tap them to actually be the actors in those scenarios, as just a way to kind of push back from some of the intensity of the behind closed doors, which I know most folks use returners in that process. So just some things and tweaks that we were trying to get just more of those hands-on experience and just seeing what we do, doing that thing and then reflecting on it. All of these activities have some sort of in-hall element where we're reflecting back on the experience that we just had, either at the conclusion of that event or later in the week. So just as a kind of a quick, like some of our assessment, we did a lot of assessment this last year, especially since it was our first year back, and we saw that 94% of our staff had, at least who had responded, had said that they felt very prepared for the role. And it was a common narrative. We had a lot of opportunity for like qualitative assessment of like what did they feel was very helpful for them, and what resonated with them, what did they remember about training. And the BCDs, tabletop, conversation skills labs, facilities training, all of the like really experiential learning pieces were the things that folks named and mentioned, right? So what we kind of also know that learning styles, experiential learning is a really powerful tool. So learning by doing. And we also just had this philosophy kind of built throughout training that we're only going to get to train so much. And a lot of their training is also going to be throughout the year. So we just try to reinforce that through our training as well, to say you're going to learn hands-on in the moment while you're in your role, and setting up the tools and resources for that. So yeah, so that's kind of just a little bit about some of the things that OSU did, or that we've incorporated into our fall training. I just wanted to give you that little preview. I was hoping that we can spend the rest of the time maybe just talking about, I have a couple questions, but just kind of wanted to open it up for the group to kind of talk about things that work on their campuses, things that they want to share, challenges that they're facing, or questions that they want to pose to the group. So I'm going to just open it up, change, there we go, so I can see everybody's face. Yeah. What questions do folks have for the group, or things that they would like to share?
I have a question for the group. First, thank you, Nick, for that. That was very helpful. I was taking a lot of notes on things that I'm like, oh, that is great, and a great way to actually like actual like stuff. The thing I'm curious about is we struggle with assessment and just doing intentional assessment and how we're gathering that data. So I'm curious about how folks like what folks are using to gather assessment, especially around training, whether it's like surveys or if there's a better way folks have found to get feedback, because we know students kind of their attention spans have changed. And so yeah, I'm just curious about like how assessment is like gathered.
I can share what we do. We've done it 2 different ways before. One of them was through a survey. So we would remind them at the end of the day, like, hey, if there's something that really like pops out as something that you really want to see continue or something that you really want to change, like please put it down in the survey. So it was generic and specific and enough for them to put whatever part of the day that they wanted to talk about versus just a whole day or the whole training itself. So you could get really into the nitty-gritty of what presentations they liked or that kind of thing. What we noticed was that most weren't doing the surveys because we tell them at the end of the day and they were tired, they're ready to go. So we switched to, we have a workbook attached to their training. So they do a lot of stuff throughout the workbook, but the last couple of pages has space for them to write. So basically a survey on paper, and we would remind them at the very beginning of the day, hey, like this is here. It's very easy for you to do throughout the presentation or right after, so that you have exactly what is on your mind to put onto that piece of paper versus forgetting when you're really tired at the end of the day. And that helped us get a lot of our assessment. It is more work at the end of the day because it is on paper, but I found that that was the better way to go about it for us. And we are a smaller school, so we have a lot less surveys.
Great. I just want to mention Teresa's comment in the chat around classroom assessment techniques that reminds educators to assess understanding in the moment and not just after learning experiences. Yeah. It was something that we did, some of the assessment that we got at OSU was we did just focus groups and or talking sessions. I really believe in the power of the qualitative data, that, folks sharing their experience. We did some initially right after training. So asking, folks, our supervisors to ask some specific questions in hall time towards the end of training and kind of summarizing some of how their conversation went. We also then did a few weeks later and did some bringing it back to our staff team meetings. We have a student staff council, so going in and talking to that group of students around their experience with training. We're looking for, especially around feeling prepared for their role, things that they wish they would have known, those kinds of pieces. Assessment more from the lens of what were we missing or what we want to focus on, less about like, did they get what we wanted them to get? I mean, truthfully, that was a little that experience. I think also sometimes there's other ways when you think about assessment, there's other ways in which sometimes you might be able to assess it and trying to think outside the box. Like, for example, like how many IRs did we have to edit as or send back to students, right? Versus not, right, as a way to see if our IR, writing tools and training are effective or not. So there's sometimes different metrics that you can kind of think about anecdotally, or you can measure, quantitatively as well. So other comments on assessment? Yeah. What are some other questions that folks may have for the group, or things that or maybe challenges or something that you really want to work through or kind of focus on, something that you've always wanted to do for your trainings or you'd like to see incorporated into your at your institution? Yeah, Christine.
So I'm quite curious about how other institutes, whether any of you around the table have included your returning staff in the actual delivery of the training, particularly folks that have shown strong skill sets and understanding of the topic. And if you did, how did that work out? How did you set that up? Yeah, so that's my first question.
I have something to say on that one. I have what we call a senior RA or a head RA. And I meet with them prior to RA training, or once they get hired, and they plan out our programming best practices training piece so that they, since they've lived with the students and they interact with more students, they actually talk to students before they leave for the summer break and ask what returning students would like to see. And then that RA presents that to the new staff as, hey, this is what students last year would like to see this upcoming year, and how can we move forward with that? The other part that they did is they participated in the actual training. So like when we did behind closed doors or social justice training, they led those conversations.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I did do that for the first time in expressions of interest for return. I asked them, like, what in the training did you enjoy? What would you feel comfortable participating in? Is there something other than what we offered that you would want to deliver? So thanks for that reinforcement.
Something that we are doing, so pre-COVID, we used to have what were called ACAs, or basically senior community advisors. We call them community advisors here. And they would come like 5 days early, and they would get some real intense training on team building, what it means to be a mentor, what it means to assist the hall director, and kind of be the peer leader voice. And they really drove a lot of those conversations and facilitated lower scale staff conflict. They helped with the scheduling of our offices. And always with our hall director, residential coordinator there, but they would kind of take it on, and really we were there to set them up for success in case a conversation went sideways. As we have gone through COVID at our institution, our returners are not that kind of caliber of returner, because we just went into survival mode, as most campuses did. We were like, don't talk to anybody, be alive. Thank you for being on call during a global pandemic. So something that we are focusing on this year is what actually is the point of having returners. And what we want from them is more of that mentor role at the peer level. So we're actually doing like online content that's like what for both new and returner, but there's a focus for the new folks on what it means to become a leader, whereas with returners, it's what does it mean to be a mentor, and like how you set the tone for the team as a peer. And then in actual in-person training, we're doing more, again, we're trying to not separate them out completely, but do again more intentional, like what does it mean to mentor and lead a team sessions with them. And then they are also going to be the ones doing all of the team building during the training time, like after lunch. So they are going to lead like those initial get energy back up kinds of things. And then the hall directors will lead kind of during in-hall and after hours time, more of the fun opt-in kind of stuff. So kind of to speak to Jay's point a little bit also with BCDs, we also with the kind of what people have been responding to, we went away from BCDs in this last year because people weren't responding to some of those high level conversations as much. And now we're kind of bringing them back for that reason. And one thing that I actually am with my director right now, we just mentioned was using people who are experts in the community instead of relying on returners. Because what we've seen on our campus is not every returner has experienced a Title IX conversation, an assault conversation. And so it's kind of putting them in an uncomfortable spot. So we're planning to utilize like I'm just kind of throwing this out here, like our care team, we have like a lot of local community people who are trying to get more involved with our campus. And so we're looking at utilizing them as the actors and the debriefers, and then, you know, coming alongside. So that was a long answer to both questions. Thank you for letting me talk.
Just a couple follow-up questions to that, Sonora. You mentioned that you have people doing some training online. Is that training that you yourself developed, or are you using something that's pre-developed by another organization?
Sure, it's a little bit of both. So again, pre-COVID, we had a leadership course that we would ask all students interested in being community advisors take before they actually got into the position. And it was open to any student. So it's not like a CA or RA class specifically, but it was part of that initial conversation. So last year we pulled, was kind of my first year on taking the lead on training. So we pulled some of that leadership course content because we just weren't able to offer it through, you know, COVID, and through priorities shifted for a lot of our students, where taking an extra leadership class was just not viable, you know, when they're trying to just complete their degree. So we developed some content based on that core class stuff. And then we also did a lot of, each hall director took on a particular type of topic that they were passionate about, and then researched it and kind of formulated stuff using our Pride Center, our Multicultural Center, the different kind of constituents on campus. And we had a lot of discussion and reflection online. What we're doing, oh, and also we did some of the initial, like, how to use, we utilize StarRes on our campus. So we did some how to use StarRes, initial facility stuff. We use Microsoft Teams for all of our communication. So there's like an intro to Microsoft Teams. So, you know, that kind of stuff. This year, we're going to pare down a lot because a lot of our DEI focus was online in terms of discussion. And we didn't, you know, connect that as well back into our in-person training, because then we got to open the buildings. So we're changing that piece where that's all going to be an in-person. But we utilize just kind of our course content that we created on our campus. And then with those of us differing, like I'm strength certified, so kind of incorporating like a strengths quest and strengths finder thing. So I'm happy to share a lot of our resources. I think it's not stuff that's so Eastern based curriculum. It's a lot of stuff that I think most of us who've been RAs in college have done in our trainings. But there's more of a focus on kind of the initial, what is leadership? Who are the people in your life that are leaders? And then doing some of that reflection stuff. And then we're going to take those reflections and incorporate it into in-hall and discussions in person. I hope that was helpful.
Yes. So just clarifying that this leadership course is one that was developed by your university. Okay. So that was one question I had, and I can't remember the other one. That's okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. And for you mentioned something around like happy to share resources. So I will share out my email, and if folks want to, there are things that you want to share, or you want as part of things that I shared, or this group, I can help facilitate getting some content put together and kind of shared as a collective for folks. So remind me to do that at the end to include and give you my email. What are some other questions, challenges, things that folks would like to talk about or explore a little bit?
I'd be interested to hear if anyone has experience with integrating Indigenous ways of knowing, doing, being, land-based learning, or anything of the like into their staff training.
We are starting to do that. We have a lovely person that works in our Learning Teaching Center who is Indigenous and who has developed a lot of courses for staff. And so we have a how to do a territorial acknowledgement. So we have that session included. We have an Indigenous garden, so we actually go outside. And we have that conversation there, and riddled in, like woven into that conversation, is a lot of what the Stolo people preferences are. So BC is a little bit different. 99.5% of the Indigenous lands here are unceded. So there were no treaties. And our community, our Stolo community has some very, like, they like territory and acknowledgements. They prefer that our territory acknowledgements really come from the heart. They're not the stead pat, okay, I'm going to read it. They even encourage our community assistants to do it in their own language, so that we're integrating other people's languages into it. So there's that. There is some training around. So we found that in our staff meetings, doing a territory acknowledgement at every staff meeting, I can literally hear the students rolling their eyes like, why again? We've already done this. So we've moved to, what has your relationship been like with the land over the last week? And so what are your observations there? We incorporate some circle works training, so that how to have conversations about issues with groups of individuals that are led by either a leader or an elder. And we're working towards including more as we progress. Oh, and there's we also have some Hul'qumi'num language sessions, so, because we're incorporating Hul'qumi'num language into a lot of our signage. We've changed our residence name to incorporate Hul'qumi'num language. And so we want our students to be able to say hello and welcome and goodbye and some greetings, and to start using those greetings.
Excellent. That sounds like some really great work that your institution's doing there to incorporate more Indigenous experiences and learning into your training. That's great. Yeah.
So Nick, I have another question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm also curious to hear from folks at this table, whether you incorporate peer support work training into your community assistant or advisor or RA, whatever training. Last year, I was introduced to the BC Peer Support Workers Training Program that was developed by BC campuses, and they have a beautiful facilitators guide and workbook, etc. And so I've started to incorporate that into my trainings, and I'm wondering if other people are doing that, and if so, how?
Christine, could you share a little bit more about what are some of the peer support like trainings from that guide, or some?
Oh, I certainly can, and I can even, post. I'm happy to attach the document, the guides to the. I'm just going through my computer here. What's going on? So it starts off by talking about the power and the value of what a peer support worker is, and how that's different from and sort of the history around it. Because as we know, peer support started happening with individual with self-help groups, AA, mental health groups. It's used in a lot of addiction works, and then goes in and establishes a foundations of values. And it covers things like empathetic listening, how to develop self-determination, how to come from a trauma-informed perspective, developing cultural humility. So those are some of the topics. And as I said, the resources from BC, they're free. Hence, I have no trouble throwing it on into the chat. I really, as I read the facilitators guides and went through the training materials, it was like, it resonated very strongly with me, because that is, by training and supporting the development of seeing yourself as a peer support worker, what it's done, what I'm seeing is it's dismantling this idea that I am the hallway monitor of the building. When I walk around on my on-call shifts or engage in during my on-call shifts, I'm not here to police you or find out if you're doing anything right or wrong. I'm here to actually support you. And what I saw over the last 2 years is a real change in our culture, because it changes the mentality of the CA. They don't, and it also gives them some confidence and comfort in that they're like, oh, no, I'm not here looking for people breaking rules. I'm here to be available to those people who need help. And it just changed their lens as well. So I'm finding it quite valuable. And I'd love to hear from other people of their thoughts about that or what they're doing. Okay. I can attach documents in the chat, right? Oh, I can. Lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody have any thoughts, response to or questions? Oh, excuse me, or additions to what Christina just shared. Or Christine just shared.
I want to do that. We haven't specifically incorporated that. I think that there's kind of like around those topics, some kind of here's how to be a peer support. I would say that we are also working on changing the narrative of what the CA role is in terms of their actual jobs is not policing, because there are a lot of issues and trauma associated with that. And interestingly, as leadership, we just were going through trauma-informed practices, and our director is gonna work on getting those facilitators back to us to talk that more specifically about that with student leaders, because they get a lot of secondhand trauma and then immediately have to jump into doing a bulletin board, so there is for us this big kind of shift focus on being trauma informed and also equipping them to have those conversations where it's not only falling on the professional staff to have, because as we know, there's power in the peer role. So we are looking at that. The other thing that we're kind of doing is we have refocused our outcomes as a department on what the residential experience is on our campus, and everything we're now doing when it comes to training, programming, response is going to be in line with those outcomes, so that it's not just kind of, well, this is what I did, there's this like, at the end of the day, as a department, as housing and residential life, here are our priorities. So as everything needs to come back to that. So I think what you're sharing, Christine, is awesome, because that helps us get to that. And another thing that we went through as professional staff is called adaptive dispute resolution training. So it incorporates a lot of that circle practice and at the staff level before we get into students facilitating that. But we are also wanting to incorporate that more into training on how they're just getting comfortable with accountability and just conversations that maybe aren't necessarily like, you suck as a person, but are like, I want to be able to be comfortable to have those initial conversations on addressing any kind of concern, or just being more vulnerable. So not necessarily specifically using this format, I would say. I think that this actually helps us guide those conversations more, but our priority has definitely shifted to not only looking at them as crisis responders and not only looking at them as policing hallways. So we are very much in that, how are they just being people and connecting with people?
Christine, you're muted. Yeah.
Try to be respectful here. I'm sorry, it was adaptive.
I can put it in the chat. Adaptive dispute resolution. One of the the people who work in our Student Rights and Responsibilities Office facilitates that. So I can reach out to her, Christine, to see if maybe she'd be a good point of contact. A lot of her work is done in ADR, and she's really trying to bring it to campus as a campus-wide initiative. So I will touch base with her and see how we can do that. So if I'll just put my email here. I'm happy to put that.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. What other questions or topics that I think we have a couple minutes left, maybe for one more topic or one more kind of check in on something that a question you have for another institution or a challenge that you're facing that you just kind of wanted this group to think about.
I have a question. Does anyone do anything with active threat or active shooter? Our campus security has been pushing us to do something with that for our staff, and I haven't had experience in building that out yet.
So I just want to ask, like, what's the request, or do you have a sense of what that training that they're expecting or hoping you would do would look like? And how it'd be different than what they would be doing for the entire campus, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was more for the entire campus, where geographically where our campus is located, the neighboring community is pretty violent at times. So they wanted us to make sure that our residents and specifically our staff were trained on what to do. And our director of campus safety is new to the role as well as of 4 months. So very new. He just wanted to make sure we have that on our books. And we've touched base a little bit on it in prior training and in our handbook for them, but we've not done an actual like active threat scenario or what to do. And I was just curious what other campuses are doing. But to answer your question, Dave, I think it'll be similar to what you would like to do for the whole campus as a whole. But since we are a community college rather than a residential, we want to make sure our residents who are here full time are safe.
Got it.
On every campus I've ever worked on, that has been very firmly the responsibility of our campus safety office or our local municipality that we partner with. When I was in a more rural area, we had one of the officers from our rural police force come in and provide that training for us. That to me feels a bit out of the wheelhouse perhaps of a residence life professional, and I think could perhaps be best created and facilitated by someone with, I don't want to say a policing background, an emergency management background.
I agree, and I think that's definitely the direction that OSU is going. I know I didn't talk about my training experience because it's very dated, but I planned RA training at a couple of different institutions for over the first 20 years of my career. And I think my challenge was always like, how do you give them enough space that they feel like they have the time they need to do the training they want to do with your staff, but they don't have like an open, like, take as much time as you need, because but for me, all of that stuff that kind of gets into that quasi law enforcement type role or emergency management role, I think other than like departmentally saying, hey, we work with these people, and then turning the stage over to them, I always get really uncomfortable when you get into anything beyond that.
Speaking of campus partners, sorry, my question has been, and perhaps you could just email me because I know we're running out of time. If any of you have any templates or written expectations that you've provided to campus partners to help them ensure that they're including experiential components, ones that have been well received, or maybe if you have a conversation with campus partners, I feel fortunate to have great campus partners who listen and I think would be very amenable to that. But if you have language or things that have worked, yeah, how do you encourage your campus partners to also include experiential components in their lectures or presentations? Yeah, if you want to send that to me, I'll put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Also really quick, I know at the time we're running out of time and I've been sitting with this question for a while. So, one of the things that we've been thinking about with our training that we're developing now is to develop some sort of a roadmap for us for the ongoing training as well into the year. And really at this point, think about developing those concrete connections with what we are enabling our CAs with right now, and then checking in and providing further information, education, training as we are into that world of residents. I was just hoping if there are any templates or curricular maps that you guys have developed that that sort of allows you to manage and connect the training now with what unfolds over the year. I think that would be extremely helpful. So anything that you can share on that front would be probably wonderful.
Excellent. I appreciate that question. I know that's something that we're thinking about and trying to trying to be intentional with, like what are some activities and resources and things that we as a training committee can help support our supervisors in throughout the year. We do also some periodic in-service trainings and things like that, and putting some intentionality behind the timing of things and what can we introduce in training and then really solidify a little bit later. But I'll name that I know we don't have that written out in any kind of roadmap at this time. So that's something I'm hoping to develop myself. If you do have any resources, I know we talked about quite different resources. If you have any resources or questions, I'm going to put my chat or my email in the chat. You can also email Northwest NWACUHO, the treasurer at northwestacuho.org. We're happy to. What I'll do is I'll spend the next week or so kind of collecting. If you have resources that you talked about that you are happy to share, send them to me. I'll put some of our resources. If you had questions that you still wanted to have open, what we'll do is we'll put a soundings blog in the Northwest NWACUHO discussion board page where we can do some shared resources there. And we'll get some, I'll find a way to get some of these resources shared to the folks that were in attendance today. If you want to put your email, I know we registered, but I'm not sure, our tech director is not here, so I'm not sure how I can capture that. So if you just want to type your email into the chat, I will make sure I will copy that so I can send out sort of a collection of resources for you all afterwards. So just thank you very much for your attendance today. I encourage you to continue to engage in this conversation and share things. I really appreciated some of the things that folks are doing. And if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks so much, y'all.
Thank you.